And we're back in the car like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your hopefully happy hump day here with me in sunny, warm Long Island, New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. A little bit of I hate to keep putting you through this, but a bit of a somber episode for today marks Bruce Willis's 70th birthday. And I'm a Gen Xer, right in the middle of Generation X. And Bruce Willis he's one of our guys. More so than almost any other major star of his era. You look at the big action stars, and in his case, some terrific dramatic roles. But you look at, for example, his buddies, Sly and Arnold, that did Planet Hollywood together, The Expendables, and they're significantly older than him. And Eastwood, Clint is 24 years older than Bruce. It's difficult to kind of compare him, because if you want to say Costner or Gibson, Bruce is an entirely different kind of performer, even though technically he and Mel, for example, they made some similar movies, but they're almost not comparable as actors in terms of the performance style and what they were able to do. We can take shots at Mel Gibson for a lot of things, but Mel Gibson is a more talented actor than Bruce Willis, and was capable. He had what you would say is greater range. Mel could be very funny. He could be deadly serious, no pun intended, but Mel had a different kind of screen persona. Bruce's screen persona is closer to Sylvester Stallone's than anyone else who I have mentioned here. I guess some people might say Costner, because Costner also had that kind of cool, a word that you might use as laconic, but he was cool under pressure, and very relatable. And this was something that was talked about. So thing with Bruce, he had been a singer, and then he was a TV star, and he actually has, I wouldn't even call it a cameo. It was more of a walk-on in a film with somebody that he worked with quite well in the mid-90s, Paul Newman. My dad's single favorite Paul Newman film, The Verdict, Sidney Lumet's 1982 courtroom drama. There is a scene, and I had watched the movie The Verdict with my dad many, many years ago. And when I was getting ready to sell my father's house, I guess it was about 2 years ago, I was temporarily, living there, and I moved out of the apartment and getting everything together. It was not really that great of a time, unsurprising. But the movie The Verdict was on Max, and I hadn't seen it in, 20, 25 years. So I just flipped it on. And there are those moments, and if you're a big fan, you've had some similar kind of experience to what I'm about to tell you, where a movie that you are familiar with, that you have seen, maybe not for a while, maybe not for a while, or maybe you have seen it more recently, but something hits you that you had not noticed before. And I remember watching The Verdict, and there's a scene towards the end of the film. Here's Paul Newman in court, and I notice a guy sitting right behind where Paul Newman is at the prosecution table. I said, that's Bruce Willis. I paused it. I looked. It was Bruce Willis. And the reason why I say it's not a cameo, nobody knew who he was. When you say cameo, it implies somebody who is a known commodity that is not listed in the credits and is not a major figure in the film. Another great cameo is Joe Pesci, for example, in A Bronx Tale. But this is not a cameo. Nobody knew who Bruce Willis was. He's just a guy that was hired. He probably got paid $200 for the day to sit in a peanut gallery, and that's what he did. But Bruce had a certain way about him, and it's hard to kind of quantify. Yes, he was really cool, and unlike Costner, and unlike Stallone or Mel, his natural default was that he's a smart aleck. He's a smart aleck. He's a wise ass. He has a devil-may-care attitude. And that is how he had the TV show with Sybil Shepherd, Moonlighting. And he was so good on that show playing, what was it, David? I think his name is David Addison. Man, it's funny that I'm pretty sure that was his name. I only watched that show a couple of times. But he had a certain way with a smirk, a wisecrack, and the, kind of incessant flirtation between he and Sybil Shepherd. Will they, won't they? Will they, won't they? But he was so good on that show, it opened the door for a movie career. And this is not something that is so out there as far as a person who is a TV star who becomes a way bigger movie star than a TV star. And you have to look no further than Tom Hanks had bosom buddies with Peter Scolari, and then he famously played Uncle Ned with Michael J. Fox on Family Ties. But if you go back to the 1950s, you have a young actor, a TV actor, who had tried to break into movies and failed. He had a contract with Universal that they let expire because this kid has no future. Well, the kid with no future ended up on a Western TV show called Rawhide. And before you know it, Clint Eastwood is making spaghetti Westerns with Sergio Leone. And here we are 60 something years later. And Clint Eastwood just put out the movie Juror Number 2, which I recently spoke of. So it's not that wacky. Not everybody is historian with the, savant neurodivergent ability to recall stuff such as myself, but it isn't that out there to say that Bruce was a TV star and then became a way bigger movie star than he ever could have dreamed of on television. His first starring role, the first movie of his that I ever saw, is a romantic comedy closer to what used to be called a screwball comedy. I don't know if they really use that phrase anymore. But a screwball comedy, generally speaking, and I'm going to tread, actually not so carefully, I don't give a fuck. Screwball comedies basically put wealthy white people into situations where they humiliated themselves. You go back to the 30s, and Cary Grant and Irene Dunne in films like The Awful Truth is this, Philadelphia Story, Katharine Hepburn and Carrie and James Stewart. There's a lot of people with a lot of money looking like fucking idiots. It Happened One Night, Clark Gable, Carol Lombard, etc., etc. Screwball comedies. They are almost impossible to do well. It is the most difficult subgenre to hit perfectly. It is so easy to be disastrous. And what I think is the best screwball comedy, also with Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant, Bringing Up Baby. If I am asked the question, what is the greatest screwball comedy ever made? That's the answer, and I accept no substitutes. But Bruce and Kim Basinger starred in a screwball comedy from a terrific filmmaker, an all-timer in Blake Edwards, another person, a filmmaker who was known for comedies, but he was a very good director of dramas as well. Films like Days of Wine and Roses, among others. But Blind Date is not entirely successful. John Larroquette is an absolute scream. William Daniels is very funny. Phil Hartman. The supporting performers are awesome. You can take issue with the plot. It's what Roger Ebert used to call an idiot plot. There are things that happen in the film which don't make sense based on what we know of the characters. Now, for example, there are certain characters, we see them in movies. If you are going on a first date with a drop-dead, knockout Kim Basinger, age 30, and you are told, whatever you do, don't let her drink alcohol. She's not going to order a drink. Don't you order a drink. Now, if it's a frat boy, the first thing he's going to do, hey, babe, you want something to drink? Nah, that's great. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But the character that Bruce plays in that film is presented as a straightforward, a decent guy. And I guess we're supposed to believe he just forgot what he was told by the Phil Hartman character. Bro, he said, don't get her drunk. What the fuck are you doing? And then madcap antics ensue. And the film didn't get particularly good reviews. But Bruce at the center is fantastic. Like, there are movies where the film itself is not good, but the lead performer is so energetic and so galvanizing. I'll give you another example from that era. Jim Carrey, 2 years before Blind Date in Once Bitten. Not a good movie. Carrey's got nothing to work with. The story is pat. It's formulaic. Brilliant casting of Lauren Hutton as a centuries-old vampire. But the film works only because Jim Carrey is a fucking genius. Even at age 22, 23, he is getting laughs just because he is so damn talented. And Bruce in Blind Date, his character goes through all kinds of crazy BS because he didn't listen to his brother-in-law who said, don't let her drink. Forget get her drunk. Don't even give her anything. Nothing. Oops. And Ebert in his review talked about it. It's like, he seems like a responsible guy. He's told don't do it. And the first thing he does is pour champagne down her throat. You know, you deserve whatever you get if you're going to be fucking idiot like that. But it opened doors for Bruce. And he did a film with James Garner, which is not that great, called Sunset. But sometimes, and I've talked about this, in Hollywood, there are things that are just meant to be. Bruce Willis's stardom, I believe, was inevitable. It was written in the stars. It was in the cards. Because from what I just told you, he has Blind Date. It did okay at the box office, but people were talking about how great he was. Well, Hollywood goes about casting what became Die Hard. Bruce Willis was not the first choice for John McClane, or the second, or third, or fourth, or fifth, or sixth, or seventh. I don't even know if he was in the top 10 of people who were at least offered the projects. Let's do the list of people who were offered John McClane. Well, the first guy was Frank Sinatra. That was not going to happen because Sinatra had played, according to, it was a book. There was a book called Nothing Lasts Forever, which was turned into Die Hard. So technically, Sinatra played the same character that was supposed to be John McClane, but it's not John McClane, but an LA cop in a similar kind of a high-rise situation. Sinatra wasn't doing it. But they went to all of the big stars of the day. I don't know about Costner, but everyone turned it down. Arnold, Sly, Bronson. I mean, Bronson? Charles Bronson? I love Charles Bronson, but give me a fucking break. And then Bruce, about 6 or 7 years ago, he did his version of Bronson in Death Wish. And Bruce, even in 2017, 2018, was so much of a better actor. I don't want to be sacrilegious, but Bruce was a way better screen actor than Bronson. But they offered it to Clint and Sly and Arnold and Gibson and all of these different people. I feel like they even tried to get Jackie Chan over here. This was before Jackie stopped making movies in Hong Kong, came to the United States, with Chris Tucker, Rumble in the Bronx a few years earlier. But everybody passed. And I don't know why, but it was just meant to be that was going to be Bruce's ticket. And so he ended up getting the role of John McClane in Die Hard. And the movie was way better than anybody could have envisioned, because you can read a script and people nowadays, there would have been more people talking about, oh my God, I've read Jeb Stewart's script or whoever. I don't know if it was Stewart who wrote the script, but I've read the screenplay and it's incredible. But what made it special was that Bruce, despite very attractive guy and athletic looking and charming and, a ladies' man, although in the world of that movie, he's still a married man, but he came across like a real person and vulnerable. And it's the moments that he is struggling with what to say to his, perhaps soon to be ex-wife, what to say to her, and what to, assuming either one of them survive, or in this case, assuming she survives and he doesn't, what does he want his lifeline on the phone, a Los Angeles sergeant named Al Powell? What does he want him to tell his wife when she's a widow, given what's all the negative shit that's gone down? And it's in these moments that Bruce finds something that maybe people didn't think that he had, with all of the smart aleck and all of the, here's a great word, insouciance, all of that. But he found the humanity and the heart in the character. This was not a standard action hero. Now, in the later sequels, John McClane more or less did become a standard action hero. But in the original, he is, yes, an Energizer Bunny, but he isn't trained enough that he at least is on even footing, because as much as the terrorists, quote unquote, they're just thieves who have some training. He is probably better trained at combat and at gunplay than any of them. And maybe some of them know how to use explosives as well or better than him, but he might be outmanned, but he is not out-prepared. But the everyman quality is what makes the movie sing. And as much as I love Stallone of that era, it just becomes a disposable action film if it's Sly. Oh, another guy who allegedly was offered it, Chuck Norris. I love Chuck, right? It was just his birthday. Carlos Ray Norris. He's 85 now. You can't cast Chuck Norris. Film's over in 15 minutes. Here's the terrorists. They're over here, and Chuck just shows up. They die from fright. Roll credits. I mean, it would be a great short film if that's what it ended up being. But if you have Arnold, it doesn't work, because you might have 8 terrorists, but if you throw Arnold in his kind of predator mode, Dutch Schaefer, they'll run out of the building screaming when they get a look at that guy. Or John Matrix from Commando. Hell, even the character of Julius Benedict from Twins. They're not going to fuck with him. You know what? No, thank you. We're all set here. We'll just do the robbery another time. Let's get the fuck out of Dodge. We don't want any part of this guy. But Bruce, little guy, you're mighty troublesome for a security guard. Sorry, Hans, wrong guess. All of that stuff. Absolute gold. The wisecracks, even something as inappropriate as who's driving this car, Stevie Wonder. That's a line that ain't getting used now, nor I don't think it should. But at the time, that's funny. No fucking shit, lady. Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza? I think he ad-libbed a lot of that stuff, and it's all great. It fits the character's growing desperation and sense of, is anybody going to help me? What am I doing here? So from the success of Die Hard, yes, there were, I think, 4 sequels total. The first 2 sequels are incredible. I think Die Hard 2, which I saw in theaters. I saw Die Hards 2 and 3 in theaters with my dad. Summer 1990, big summer. And then summer 1995, also a great movie. Summer is not a great movie year. Die Hard with a Vengeance is awesome. And the way that they tie in the character of Hans Gruber from the first film with the Jeremy Irons Mad Bomber. Alan Rickman does not look like, or did not look anything like, the great Oscar winner Jeremy Irons, but just the thought of them as brothers, man, that would have been a great movie to have the two of them together as, super villains. Wow. But the Die Hard series kind of went downhill after that. And Bruce had a lot of misses. There were films that he made that didn't do that well, that you can see why he wanted to do it. He did a film with an actress who was rising at the time. Seemed like she was going to be a bigger star than she ended up being, Emily Lloyd. Did a film called In Country. Didn't really work. And he was part of the unfortunate disaster that was Brian De Palma's adaptation of Tom Wolfe's stupendous runaway bestseller, The Bonfire of the Vanities. And Bruce he was simply miscast. The studio was thinking in terms of box office. Oh, we're going to get nominated for Oscars. They were thinking in terms of box office. The character that he played in the book was British. They didn't even have Bruce do a British accent. At least I don't think he did it. He just played the part straightforward. It was written for someone like a John Cleese, that kind of character. Or maybe an Australian actor. You could have gone with like a Brian Brown in that role or someone like that, but it didn't work. But thing with Bruce, it's like he had 9 lives as a major star, because he had all of these misses, and even some films that got good reviews but then didn't do well at the box office. But Hudson Hawk from 91 bombed, but then he came right back with The Last Boy Scout, which was huge. That's what she said. But The Last Boy Scout did pretty well at the box office, and he kept kind of alternating between hit movies and misses. He had Striking Distance with Sarah Jessica Parker, Dennis Farina, Tom Sizemore, among others. I thought that was pretty good, but I may have been the only one. And he did a film called Color of Night with Jane March in 94, and that was a disaster. But in 94, he also had Pulp Fiction. And Quentin Tarantino handpicking Bruce to play the character of Butch, who, spoiler alert, is more or less the last man standing, or one of the last men standing in the film. And Bruce was so good in that movie. He didn't go outside of himself. This was not a character who was a smart aleck. He's a boxer. He's maybe been around too long. Time to kind of call it quits. Maybe needs a little bit of money, but he kind of works for a crime boss, Marcellus Wallace. That's the Ving Rhames character. And he's told to throw a fight, and there's something, he doesn't want to throw the fight, so, but he plays a character in an entirely different way than any John McClane or Peter Fallow or the other characters, the guy he plays in Striking Distance, or the weirdo psychiatrist that he plays in Color of Night. But just to show how versatile and how he was able to dial back his charisma in certain instances, and in other areas, just raise his game to match whoever he was on screen with. Same year. And I don't know which movie was shot first. I assume Pulp Fiction was shot first, but I'm just taking a guess. But he did the film, Robert Benton film, called Nobody's Fool. And if I'm asked from an actor perspective, what are Bruce Willis's 5 best performances? Nobody's Fool is going to be one of them. It's a supporting performance. It's Paul Newman's movie. And it was Newman's last Best Actor nomination. And if it hadn't been for Tom Hanks' runaway freight train level performance in Forrest Gump, even though he had won for Philadelphia the previous year, I actually think his performance in Gump is better now. It feels better to me now than when I first saw it, where I said, oh, it's just kind of a one-note performance. But Bruce Willis plays a key supporting role in Nobody's Fool, and his character is fascinating. And Bruce plays him close to the vest. We're never really sure, is he really a friend of, what's his name? Well, they call him Sully, but his name is something Sullivan. I don't remember what his first name, if it's Thomas. But the character Paul Newman plays, funny, I just talked about the movie Sully, but his character's last name is Sullivan, and he goes by Sully to almost everybody in the world of the movie Nobody's Fool. And there's a running gag in the film, which is similar to a running gag that Newman got involved in about 3.5 years later in the movie Twilight. And the running gag, which isn't really a gag, is that he's in a comical way, he's attempting to have an affair with the wife of a friend. And Bruce Willis in Nobody's Fool plays basically a scumbag. He's a skirt chaser. And Melanie Griffith is his wife in the world of the film. And Melanie is really good. She was so good. She had so many terrific performances in various movies, in the 80s and 90s. Of course, we remember Working Girl, Oscar nomination. But there's just so much in her performance in Nobody's Fool. Man, did Melanie win the Oscar for supporting actor? See, I'm drawing a blank. I feel like she did, but I'm completely blank on that because I'm focused now. I'm trying to stay on point here. But in Nobody's Fool, the Paul Newman character, who is significantly like at least 30 years older than Melanie Griffith's character of Toby, who's married to Bruce in the film, he keeps trying to hook up with her, but he does it in such a gentlemanly, yeah, I'm just fucking with you. I know that I'm a million years too old for this to really happen. But as the story unfolds, it looks like it might happen because Bruce's character is just terrible. He's not physically abusive, but he's just a lousy husband. And honestly, Melanie Griffith Toby, she deserves better than this guy. And there is a moment in that film where Bruce, it's like, if it's a different movie, he's going to kind of be broader and blow up, but he doesn't, because this is not that film. This is a quiet character study. This is not a plot twist kind of movie. And Bruce, even though at that time he's the biggest star in the cast, he does not want to step on Paul Newman's toes. He lets the older actor, the legend, he lets him do his thing. And really beautiful work from Bruce. Yeah, and then he did Die Hard 3, which, what a great movie, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Just awesome. And then he made a lot of films in the 90s. Some people love The Fifth Element, don't like it. I like Luc Besson, The Professional, Leon, top 10 greatest action movies ever made. I think it's on the list. Don't like The Fifth Element. Don't like Armageddon. No, thank you. It's just not good. Didn't like Disney's The Kid from 2000. No, thank you. But he also did The Sixth Sense. And I don't know what M. Night Shyamalan saw in Bruce's earlier work, but he was convinced, this is my guy for this main character of a script that I wrote. Malcolm Crowe, he's a psychiatrist or a psychologist, whatever it is, and Bruce is perfect in that movie. M. Night nailed it. The casting was right on the button. And then you go ahead, for example, and that was an enormous box office hit, nominated for a ton of Oscars, including Best Picture. You normally wouldn't get a kind of psychological horror film as a Best Picture nomination. It showed how much of an impression I See Dead People made on the movie-going public. But he worked and worked and worked, and it's like the guy barely ever took any time off. And as he got older, he just kept working. And there are some movies of his in the 2000s, such as Tears of the Sun, that a lot of people love. I thought 16 Blocks was pretty good with Mos Def. I thought that was a really good movie. He did some decent films. Hostage with Ben Foster, I thought was kind of top level action, but he didn't really, there's nothing in like the last 15 years of his career for me where I say, oh my God, that, this was great. That was great. I like Sin City. That's a good ensemble piece. Robert Rodriguez, a very Tarantino-esque kind of story. I like it, but I don't automatically think of Bruce when I think of that film. Honestly, I think of Mickey Rourke first. Even though it's more Bruce's movie, certainly than Mickey or any of the other people. What an incredible cast like Elijah Wood or Benicio del Toro. Just a terrific movie. That's probably my favorite Bruce Willis film from, let's say, the mid-2000s until the end of his career. And I realize I've skipped so much. What an amazing screen presence. What a great, and the thing is, though, this is where you get into when people are, or have reputations for being difficult. There are different levels, and Bruce wasn't necessarily difficult, but on certain movies, he did voice his opinions, at times where normally, this would be a protocol breach, like with Bonfire of the Vanities, when, there was a scene that he ended up being right. He was the only actor who during filming thought they were fucked. And there's a moment in the film, it's a scene that he shares with the late great comic actor, Alan King. And he felt it just wasn't working. And he said something like, "We're dying out here." Don't do that. But other than those kind of brief moments, and there's a few times he maybe get into a brush with paparazzi, Bruce was a good dude. He's always come across like a salt of the earth. Like, he's the real deal. He's always been real. And to see his health go downhill so quickly, because as recently, certainly as 2019, he did the film where Edward Norton directed. A lot of people thought it was Best Picture worthy, Motherless Brooklyn. And sadly, there are those that say it's Bruce's last really terrific, top level performance. But you won't find too many people who will say anything negative about him, and not just because, the frontotemporal dementia. Nobody knows, can he speak anymore? I mean, Don Johnson was on, I forgot whether he was on with, Fallon or Kimmel. I don't know which program, but the way that Don Johnson was getting emotional, I mean, he was coming across like he doesn't think Bruce has much time left, that he's gonna pass. And we don't know that, but for people to even be hinting at it, it can't be good. And the daughters and Demi and Emma, his wife, they're all over social media praising him and saying things like, just keep wishing him happy birthday. We read everything to him, and I know he appreciates how many fans have his back. And it's true. If there was a way for everybody's love for Bruce as a person, as an actor, as a character, as a businessman with Planet Hollywood and stuff like that, if there was a way where all of the kind of good vibes coming from even just people like me and maybe people such as yourselves, if there was a way for that to actually help, I mean, I would do it. All of the positive energy imaginable sent his way. We can hope for a miracle. I don't know what that would even entail, but I hope that Bruce is not suffering, and I hope that he has many more years with his kids, with his bride, Emma, with his ex-wife, who is still a very big part of his life, Demi. Man, what home run hitters, the two of them. My gosh, what an incredible person she is, what a career she's had, and the way that she is so helpful, almost taking turns with Emma when she's in the area, so Emma can maybe take a break, and she tends to him. I mean, these aren't things that you would ever think about when you're young and you're hooking up with somebody, and look where they are now. Two great people, all-timers as far as the movie business. But I'm still sad, not just that his career is over, but that his health has declined so sharply in the last, 5 years or so. If it's possible for Bruce to have a happy 70th birthday, I am wishing him, and everybody who's tuning in here, I hope as well, wishing him the happiest 70th birthday possible to one of the great stars in the history of cinema, and a genuinely good human being by almost all accounts. Happy birthday, Bruce Willis. This has been episode 474 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your happy hump day with me here in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.